Hello everyone, in this video I want to talk about 5 things to know when living in mold. Now this video is being made on the assumption that you already know and have a basic understanding that living in a water damaged property can contribute to poor health. Now we have an abundance of research in animals, this is the case. We have some research in humans, but I do want to highlight that there is limited research in this area at this point in time. But having supported clients for over a decade with mold-related illnesses, I can absolutely say with confidence that it's a real thing that we have to be thinking about our environmental exposure to mold from a water-damaged building. Meaning if you have lived in a property that had a water leak or just had some damp issues like rising damp, or if you lived in an apartment and the person above you had a water leak, these are situations whereby sometimes our health can be quite significantly impacted. So the 5 things are, starting with number 1, we need to think about air quality. Now obviously air quality is severely compromised if we're living in a water damaged property, so we need to do our best to improve it. Now that would mean potentially getting a dehumidifier and also an air purifier. Mold grows in humid environments, so reducing the humidity can be really important here. You can actually buy very cheaply a hygrometer, a little device. You can get them off Amazon for £5, £6, £7, and it will show you what the humidity is in the room that you put the device. So having had issues with mold myself, I found this quite an interesting and helpful exercise. I suddenly realized that it's kind of obvious, but it wasn't until I did this exercise that I realized that especially in the kitchen when cooking, humidity levels go through the roof in our kitchen. So we now have a dehumidifier running 24/7 in our kitchen because we do struggle with a little bit of damp in one of the corners. Now an air purifier can also be very helpful. We want to make sure that the air purifier can obviously purify and sort of draw in the mycotoxins, and I will add links to all of the different products and supplements that I mention in the notes below this video to make it easy for people. When we had a real mold issue, we just went to Which and we picked the best dehumidifier and air purifier that we could afford. And I know that's common sense, but I think it's a really important thing to reiterate because sometimes clients get really bogged down in the finer details and they get really stressed out about which dehumidifier or air purifier can I buy or should I buy. And really the answer is, well, what is your budget? What are you happy to spend? You don't need to break the bank on this, but you do want to invest in the best quality product that you can afford. It's going to last you at least a decade probably, and therefore it's a good investment. And as a side note, if you just look at the research that is available on indoor air quality generally, we should all be investing in a good quality air purifier. And although that might sound a little bit extreme to some, it really is a good recommendation based on the science that we currently have available to us. Now, if you can, or even if you, if you can't, or even if you can afford a dehumidifier or an air purifier, crack open the windows. It doesn't have to be for long on a cold day. Just ventilate your property as frequently as you can. And obviously limit the time that you spend in parts of the house that have been impacted via water damage. Those are all things that are going to just help lighten the load, so to speak. Next, let's think about gut health. A lot of these mycotoxins are lipophilic, meaning they are fat-loving. So one of the things we want to do is we want to make sure that we're having frequent bowel movements, and that should mean we're having 1 to 3 bowel movements a day. These lipophilic mycotoxins get stored in fat compartments of our body. That's not just our body fat, that's the fatty parts of all of our cells. The cell membrane, the skin of the cell, is made up of primarily fat. The membrane of our mitochondria, where we create our energy in the cell, is primarily made up of fat. These are areas of the cell where mycotoxins can get stored, set up shop. And therefore, making sure that we have a healthy liver and bile flow and that we're pooing at least once a day is a prerequisite to effective detoxification. So let's just break that down quickly. Bile is produced in the liver, bile gets stored in the gallbladder, and at meal times when you're eating some fat, bile will get squirted into your small intestine to help you break down the fats to make them easier to digest and absorb. A lot of different types of toxins get put into bile, so when they go into our intestine, we can draw out the toxins and then we can poop them out. So making sure that we're having a regular bowel movement is step one. Making sure that our bile is moving is step two, we could say. We can support bile production and flow by eating or drinking bitter type foods. That could be coffee. That can be things like wild rockets in a salad. That can be things like beetroot, things like dark chocolate, green tea can all be helpful when it comes to bile. Citrus, having some lemon or lime infused in your water. These are things that might be helpful to support this sort of pathway and help eliminate these mycotoxins. If you're struggling to have 1 to 3 bowel movements a day, make sure you're eating appropriate amounts of fiber. You could consider adding a little bit of psyllium husk. Some people with chronic constipation do well with adding some vitamin C or magnesium citrates. I've actually just recorded a video that I'm going to release soon on our YouTube page on the probiotic BioGaia, a strain of lactobacillus that is really helpful in improving chronic constipation and obviously therefore helping regular bowel movements. It's hard to go into the finer details around this without knowing the individual, because it depends on the context. It depends on the nuance of what's happening for that person symptomatically in regards to what we might want to do. But one thing that I do use quite a lot with clients, and this comes from a recommendation from Dr. Jill Christer, who is really a leading expert in this field, is using spore-based probiotics quite a lot. And again, I'll add links to these products below so you can at least check them out. So we've got trying to improve air quality to the best of our ability. We need to be having a regular bowel movement and thinking about our bile as well. Oh, and bitters are a good thing for bile, so that could be in supplement form as well. A little tincture. I really like a liposomal bitters formula by Quicksilver Scientific. It tastes really nice as well. The third thing is we want to make sure or reduce our risk of you getting colonized. Molds can colonize in our sinuses and in our GI tract. And this is one of the reasons why it's thought that if you live in a moldy property and you move out, you can still be ill a decade later if you've been colonized by mold. The way I think about it is you have become your own mobile moldy property. Looking after your sinuses and your GI tract while in a moldy property is therefore obviously going to reduce the risk of being colonized. That's where the probiotics, the fiber, and all the usual things around gut health can be helpful. From a sinus perspective, it's using a sinus spray, something that contains maybe a bit of xylitol or maybe a little bit of silver as a way to maintain healthy sinus health. So reducing our risk of being colonized is going to be really important. Another one is reducing your intake of mycotoxins from your food. There's an abundance of research showing us that certain food groups are frequently contaminated with mycotoxins. It includes coffee. So if you're a coffee lover like myself, ensure that you are drinking a coffee which is lab tested to be mycotoxin free. The one I recommend in the UK is Exhale Coffee. I have put my hand up. I have an affiliation with them. I work for Exhale Coffee, but they are third-party tested to be free from mycotoxins, pesticides, herbicides, and heavy metals. There's a company called Purity Coffee in the US that is, I believe, lab tested to be mycotoxin free as well. But certain grains, certain things like dried fruit, nuts, things like grapes, have all been frequently shown to be contaminated with mycotoxins. So give it a Google, you'll find a few other foods that might pop up that can be frequently contaminated. But it's actually why it's been theorized, should I say, that this is why some people respond to a paleo-style diet, because you're reducing your intake of grains and certain foods that can be frequently contaminated with mycotoxins. The fifth and final thing is you need to move and you need to breathe healthily and you need to expose yourself to infrared light as a way to move your lymph. Your lymphatic system is a key part of your detoxification and immune system. And supporting this is, again, foundational. Exercise is a way that we can move the lymph through our lymphatic system. Breathing through the diaphragm, diaphragmatic breathing, is a way that we move lymph through the lymphatic system. And infrared light is a way that we move lymph through the lymphatic system, which means getting outside and exposing as much of your skin as you can to natural full spectrum sunlight, and using a kind of near infrared lamp as a way to expose yourself to these frequencies of light. All of those can really help your lymphatic system. So those are 5 things to know when living in mold that can just lighten the load, that might help you tolerate that environment while you deal with the underlying issue, which unfortunately sometimes has to be moving property or has to be remediating that damage that has occurred if you're really going to get back to optimal health. But I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole in this video. I want to target 5 things that everyone can do that can lighten their load and help them while they are in that property. If you have any questions, leave a comment below. I will do my best to reply to you as quickly as I can. If you have any other tips or tricks, then feel free to share away. I think people really get a lot from positive, constructive comments that are left in these videos. So as I say, any questions, guys, leave a comment below. I will be back soon with another video, but I really do hope that helps some of you in what can be an incredibly stressful, challenging, confusing situation when we're living in a water damaged property.